we had started now. So this was the architecture that I showed you last time. And as you can see, it's the so-called three-tier architecture, because we have three layers. One layer for the database, one layer for the application server, which contains the logic, and then the presentation layer where you are, and through the browser you can access the website and see HTML pages. What we are doing in this course is just to relate to the front-end part of your project, of your website, so you don't have to connect a database, I guess, or write REST API to connect your server with your website. And in the front end, we saw last time HTML and CSS, which gives the structure and the style to your page. And we didn't see JS. Today we will deal a little bit with jQuery, which is a library for JavaScript, very useful to write JavaScript in an efficient way. I don't know how many of you knows jQuery. I'm just asking now in the chat. Who used jQuery? Who knows jQuery? Who has seen jQuery? Okay, just two of you have seen jQuery, not four. Okay, you are a minority, but I know, but I don't use it because it's very messy. And what you use? What do you use? So okay. So you use front-end frameworks and you don't use jQuery. Okay, yeah, we have to say that modern front-end development uses a lot this kind of frameworks, and these kind of frameworks are absolutely a valid alternatives to jQuery. jQuery is the most efficient way, let's say, to use plain JavaScript and in the same time use a syntax which is very short and allows you to direct access variables or direct access tag, and it's really useful. But now with Angular, Vue, and React, it's changed a lot the way you can interact with your front end. So it's good to use React and Vue.js. I personally use Angular and Vue for my project, but I started with jQuery when I started. So this was the front end part we are going to deal with, and as I said before, today's lesson is devoted to Bootstrap. Before starting with Bootstrap, I just want to briefly recap what we have seen during last lecture. As said before, last lecture was devoted to HTML and CSS, and I'm not doing all the recap of the HTML part, because we will see HTML tag also in today's lesson. But about CSS, I want to recap some basic concepts related to the responsivity of your website. So how we deal with responsivity? Okay, here there is an error here. I will correct it. How do we deal with responsivity using CSS? We can use the media query to target specific device screen dimension, and specify what kind of CSS code we want inside that specific piece of CSS. In case we are going to target, for example, a screen that has minimum width of 480 pixels, this is the CSS we are going to use. So we are going to, this is a selector for ID. So we are going to select the element with ID left sidebar, and we are going to specify this width and this position. And of course, it's the left sidebar and its position is left. And we are going to select the main the element which has the main tag and apply a margin left of 260 pixels. It's also possible to load from diff links, and you can load different CSS according to the kind of media, and this is an example for doing this. And here you have the link to media queries that I showed you also in the last lecture. There is the same syntax that I put in the slide before, and here there are some basic examples. But this is a recap of what we have seen in the last lecture. This is again something that we talked about 3 weeks ago, and how you can introduce the concept of responsivity with CSS in your HTML. So you have to add this tag, this meta tag in your header, in the head of your HTML page, the head tag. So the meta viewport tag control the width and scale based on the browser viewport. And if you include this content width equal device width, you're going to match the screen width in device independent pixel, and this is useful. If you want to establish a one-to-one relationship, you put your initial scale to 1, and you have to ensure that your page is accessible but not disabling the user scaling. So these are 4 requirements in order to have your page responsive with CSS. And other best practice to follow when you are dealing with CSS for your for styling your page and to add responsivity to your page, please do not use large fixed width elements. Also try to use the most, for example, percentage and other kind of measures, like for example rem or em. Content should not rely on a particular viewport, and you have to guarantee that the media queries applies for all kind of monitors that you have. For standard measures, I'm putting the same link of the last time. Here there is a list of all the dimensions for screens. I don't know why it's not working right now. Okay, now it's working. So this is, for example, the media queries for the iPhones. And it's a long list. As you can see, there are also Galaxy phones, Google phones, every kind of device that you can use to run a website. So this was the summary of the last lecture, also concerning the responsivity part. But why I select the responsivity, to recap, because Bootstrap delivers this responsivity management in an automatic way, and in a easiest way respect of the media queries and the plain CSS. This is the goal of today. We are going to do this website. It's a single page. It's a landing page, single page website. And this was a GIF, and it was supposed to move, but since it's a PDF, it's not working. So what I'm going to do is to show you the complete project that we are going to do today. So it's running, so it should be reachable at localhost 8080. Okay, that is. Every of you can see the website right now, just to be sure. Okay, thanks. And this is what we are going to do today. This is a simple landing page that I did these days to show you some basic elements of Bootstrap and how to use them. And this is I recreated our laboratory website. Our laboratory is called iTrailUp, and this is just a simple landing page to see, for example, the mission of the laboratory, technologies, projects, people, and a simple contact form. There is all the basic elements that you will need in order to do a landing page, do a page that presents your project. Then I don't know if you have to do just one page or you have to manage more than one page, but this is an example, and then you can bring the same elements that we are going to use here in other pages, of course. And we will see also how to bring other contents from the outside. So this is what we are going to do today, and to do so we are going to use Bootstrap. Bootstrap, it's open source, and this is another advantage of Bootstrap. And as I said before, it's a front-end library for designing website and web application. Talking about libraries and talking about frameworks sometimes is misunderstanding. Usually we use library and frameworks as a synonyms. Strictly speaking, there are some difference between libraries and frameworks, but let's say that when library used to introduce some specific rule of coding and some specific rules to follow in general, the libraries become a framework. So we can switch among them and using them as synonyms, but talking about frameworks, it means that you are dealing with something which is really complex and which force you to write code in a predefined way, let's say. While with libraries, you just import some functionalities that you need, and then you use it. Of course, also to use a library, you have to follow some specific rules, but it's less strict. What contains Bootstrap? It contains HTML and CSS-based design templates for any kinds of HTML tag that you want, from navigation, buttons, form, and also contains some interface to manipulate your HTML elements using JavaScript. As this was another things that I said before, but I want to stress it again. Bootstrap only concerned with front-end development, and only concerned with the style of your page, and this is what Bootstrap do. It's not a framework like for example, as we were talking about Vue or about React or Angular. It's completely different. In fact, Bootstrap is defined as a CSS framework. So he has his set of rules and it has its specific target, and it's like a plugin. You insert Bootstrap in your page and you can start using it. These are some components of Bootstrap, and I want to show you the complete list of them. You can find them in the Bootstrap website at that link. As you can see, the list is very long. This is the list of components. Then of course you have also other kind of information that you can bring. There are, for example, buttons. We will see buttons, then the navigation bar, carousel are also important. And another things that it's really useful in Bootstraps are themes. Themes or templates are another features of Bootstrap. Of course, to use a theme or to use a template, you need the basic skills on Bootstrap, because otherwise you don't understand what you are manipulating. But once you are familiar with Bootstrap, template and themes allows you to speed up a lot your work, and also to identify some specific element that you need for your page. And then once you have selected this element, it's just a copy and paste. In fact, we have seen last lecture how to extrapolate HTML and CSS code from an HTML a page on the web. We right click on the page, we are going to view the source code of the page, and then there will be the HTML and all the references to external files, so to the CSS. How to use Bootstrap? There are three ways. You can you can download it and use it locally. So you go on Bootstrap we go on the Bootstrap website here, home, download, and you have the download version of Bootstrap. Otherwise, you can also download the source file. You can import Bootstrap using the CDN, or otherwise you can use the node package manager, which is called npm, to install it. Using npm, I'm not suggesting you to use npm, since maybe you are not using a server for your website, so you don't use Node. Maybe you don't have Node installed on your computer, so I don't suggest you to use Node, but have it locally, or importing it using a CDN for you. It's the best, are the best options. And when you import Bootstrap, and overall when you introduce Bootstrap locally on your PC, this is what you see. You will have a Bootstrap folder, and inside the Bootstrap folder there will be three subfolders. One for the CSS with different CSS file and mapping. One JS folder which contains the file Bootstrap.js and its minified version, and then a folder for fonts. Usually when you code, there are two phases of development. There is the so-called development phase while you are still testing your code, and then there is the production phase when your code is put online. Usually in the development mode, it's suggested to use not minified version in order to also understand better the errors that you do during your coding. For example, if you have to use an external library and you import this external library in its minified version, you cannot read the minified version, because minified version it's something like this. I don't know if any of you has ever seen a minified file. I'm going to show you right now. So this is, for example, the Bootstrap minified version, and as you can see, it's just all the logic, all the code written is just one line without spaces. And this is a work that the browser do for you in order to minimize the file length, and the browser eliminates all the spaces and gives you this compact version, which is really useful in production, because you are not dealing with this. But if you want to understand well how a function is work, or what are the parameters that a function is going to receive, in this way you cannot do, because it's unreadable. So once you have Bootstrap installed, you can start from its boilerplate. Bootstrap boilerplate, it's really useful because it gives you the structure of a empty HTML page with all the import that you need in order to use Bootstrap. Also, this part here, you can download, you can see how you can do this from the Get Started guide. And as you can see, you will find this code in the Bootstrap homepage. You just can copy it, and I will create, not in the CSS folder, but outside, I will create a new file called index.html, and I'm going to import this. So in this way, you should have your Bootstrap working, and in this way you can use Bootstrap imported from a CDN. Since I'm using a local version of Bootstrap, I'm not going to use this link, but I'm going to just refer to add a path to my CSS file inside the CSS folder. So here I'm importing a style sheet. The name of this style sheet is Bootstrap, and I'm going to use the minified version because I don't want to edit it in any way. And I'm using the path to tell the page where to tell the browser then when there is the file. These are at the end are other imports that you need to use in order to use Bootstrap. And you have jQuery, Popper, and Bootstrap to use them. So in order to start, I really suggest you, when you will do your project, to use this boilerplate because it gives you a work already done and it saves you time. Since I'm using my local file, I'm going to change this part of the code, but as you can see, I didn't edit anything. The only thing I had the jQuery import, I have the Popper import, this time from CDN, and then I have the Bootstrap also import. As you can see from the path of this file, there is a JS folder that we didn't already create, so I will do it now. No, this is for file. I have to create a folder. The folder is called, let's call it JS, and inside of this folder we put our jQuery minified version and the Bootstrap minified version. I'm using my local files to do this, and not the one of the Bootstrap boilerplate guys, but just because I'm sure that with my local file it will work. I'm pretty sure that it will work also with this template, with this boilerplate, because all the version are the last version imported, so I'm sure that it will work also with this. So we have basically put the base ground of our home page. Where is our home page? It's here, and right now there is nothing, of course, because it's just empty. Our index.html has just one hello world. So no, it's not empty. We have something. So if we now execute this, if we now open this page, we should see something. I don't know if you are following me. It's any of you which is trying to write code with me. Okay, great. So what are you using as editor? Atom, okay. Okay, I'm using Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code, it's different from Bragget. Bragget has a kind of internal node server that allows you to run your pages also locally without starting anything. Since I'm not using Dreamviewer or Atom, I had this. Wait, I'm going to share with you this. I'm usually going to use this, which is a local server that you can install. I can share with you the link because I think it's useful. This is just a local server that you can download, and you can practice with your pages, just without the need to learn Node and write a basic Node server. So I give you the link. Now I want to show you what is right now our project. So what is the name of the folder? ed bootstrap. So let's see. Okay, I'm in and the server has started. So right now, if I go here and I refresh the page, I should see hello world. And this is great because it's just what we did. So there is no missing part. We in our body we just have an heading one with text hello world, and what we have in our page is an hello world message. So from till here everything is fine. So I will return on this later, because this is something that tells the difference between Bootstrap 3 and Bootstrap 4. We will see them later. And before starting the writing really code, I want to explain you one particular features that Bootstrap 4 has, and this is the possibility to use responsive code using containers. Container, as we have seen in the HTML part, is the basic element in HTML. Everything is a container. You can put other element inside a container, so you can nest it containers, and every HTML element is seen as a container. But in this case, what we are doing is to give a class container to a specific element. Giving this class to a tag, to an HTML element, makes this tag responsive. So Bootstrap 4 introduced this special class called container, and if you have, for example, a div, and this div is of class container, this div will be responsive. If you use container fluid, the div will be responsive and also will have 100% width. And then if you use container minus your dimension or the breakpoint, so you will use keywords such as SM, MD, LG, or XL, you will have a container which is scaled based on the keyword that you are using. We can see more in details the container on the Bootstrap website. Let's say that Bootstrap website will be like a Bible for you if you are using Bootstrap, because in the guide you will find all the elements that you need that Bootstrap offers, and also useful links. Of course, other places to find useful code are GitHub, Stack Overflow if you have problems. Otherwise, Googling it's the best way to find solution to your problems if you had one. So this was what we were telling before about the breakpoints that you can use: small screen, medium screen, large, and extra large. And this is another features that Bootstrap introduces, which is the grid system. So what we have seen till now is that Bootstrap offers you a automatic responsive way to write code just using containers, and this is something related to the responsivity. Now, how Bootstrap manage your HTML page? If you are using Bootstrap, you are allowed to use special kind of class, let's say a special kind of containers, which is a row. Inside the row, you can put columns. So what you have, it's a grid. It's kind of a grid. In fact, you have, for example, this is a first row, and this first row is divided in 12, because the maximum number of columns that you can have in a row is 12. So here you have 4, 8, 12 span that have one column dimension. If you don't want to use just one column space, but you want to do a span that is that has a width of 4 columns, you just wrote, for example, call 4, and the row will be field with just 3 of these elements. But you don't have to keep the dimension of your columns the same. You can also use different column dimension. For example, in this case, you will have a first part which is 1/3 of the rest, basically. The second example, it's a row divided in a half, while the last example is just a row with full width. We will talk about this justify content and align self because they are related to flex, which is a new way that Bootstrap 4 has to manage to align your content, to display your content, and flex can be a little bit tricky. We will dive a little bit in flex later. I want to show with you also this is the way that you can write your grid system using Bootstrap. So what you are doing, it's a container introduce the responsivity in this HTML element. Then we are going to use another div, so another box, let's say, where we are going to put a row. Inside this row we have a column that has X and Y. X means that you can express what kind of device, what kind of screen you are targeting, while with the epsilon allows the Y, allows you to specify a number from 1 to 12. So in this way, you can express all the combinations that you want without writing several media queries. So let's recap. Maybe we have an example. Okay, we have it. So this is the row, and inside the row we are going to put these 3 columns, and each column is as a width of 4. So our row is spread in 3 columns as 3 columns. In this case, instead, we have that's a first column, which is the half of the second one. As said before, we didn't say this before, but if you are referring to extra small screens, so if you are going to write XS here inside the X, you can avoid it because it's XS is the default measure as default. In fact, we in the media queries part before, when we were seeing CSS, what we have said is that we don't have to take the large screen as a default dimension, but we have to start from the smaller one and then understand how to display content when the screen is larger. Of course, you can express also a kind of responsiveness of your code without writing several media queries. For example, in this case, what you're doing, you're writing that you want your code, you want this column, which is full width when you have a very small screen, while should be 8 column when you are dealing with a medium-sized screen. Instead, here you are telling that your column will occupy 6 out of 12 when you are on a small screen, and it will occupy 4 when you are on a large screen. And see what happened in case we are in a font view. So in case we have the col 12 and col 6 valid, this is the expected layout that we are going to have. So our row is spread because the first column is a full width column, so it occupies all the space, all the line, all the row, and then you have the other column which is 6, which is exactly the half of the full length, and so it occupies, it arrives till the half of the screen. The same rule is applied also for desktop view, and in case of desktop you have 8 and 4. So having 8 and 4 means that the first column will be of width 8 out of 12, while this column will be length of width 4 out of 12. So writing just one line allows you to manage the dimension of your content, the position of your content for 2 devices. And I hope that you are understanding the power and how we can use Bootstrap to also write less code. So here we start with the elements that we are going to put in our site. Since we are starting with this part, I will have a break right now, so we can restart in 10 minutes at 10:30, and then we have 1 hour and a quarter more or less to do all the website together and see each part that we are using in our website. So if you're okay with this, I will stop right now the recording and the sharing. No, I will let the sharing. I will just stop the recording for now. Fine. So since I'm using that server and it's just one instance, we don't have a clear reference to the full project, but I showed you before, so I hope that you remember it. There was a navigation bar, a purple navigation bar, then another with the image of our laboratory, and then different sections. For this part, I will start with the navigation part and the header, and then we will add all the things. I will go to I don't know if code it live each part or just copy and paste, because I have my project already done. Maybe copy and paste can be a solution to save some time, but I will wait for you in order to give you the time to write the code on your own. One thing I think it's important for you in order to follow me. Do you see clear the code in Visual Studio, or I have to zoom it? Okay, it's clear. Thank you, Martina. Thank you, Elena. Okay, so this is our starting point. We have Bootstrap already imported. We have also jQuery because we will use a little bit of jQuery. We did our import here for what concerned the script part, and for what concerned the style part instead, we are going to put our import in the head. This is an important best practice that it's usually used in front-end coding. All the script that in some way regards part of your body and import of scripts, you have to put them at the end of the body before the closing tag. While for what concerns the style, you're going to assign the style in the head part of your HTML page. So please follow these instructions, because otherwise you will have problems with your code. Because for example, some variables may not have been read from your scripts. Overall, if you use your personal script and you manage variable, if you don't put the script at the end of your body, the script will not be able to search for your variable and to manipulate the variable. Because if you put your script in the head, when the browser parses your DOM, when the browser parses your page, it will parse before the script with all the variables, all the things, but the HTML code it's not created yet. So all the operation will be lost or will be undefined, because the HTML elements are not defined yet. So please put the scripting part at the end before the body tag, and for the style part use the head. So we can start. First thing to do is to add a navigation bar. So let's see in Bootstrap what is a navigation bar. For navigation bar, we can use nav class, and to wrap the nav class, we can use the nav bar. As you can see, there are different classes that Bootstrap gives to you. And you can add all these classes to your navbar. For example, to have a navbar which is which has a width of your as a width which is equal to your screen width, you can use navbar expand LG. Navbar light, background light instead gives this lighter background to the navbar. You can substitute light with dark to have a dark theme. As you can see in the navbar, you can put also button. The toggle collapse is usually used when you stretch for responsivity, and we will see how to add this behavior also in our navigation bar. So let's return to our code now. Let's get rid of this heading, and let's start to add our code. So first thing to do is to add the navigation bar. Let's use comment to specify each part that we are going to use. This is the way we write comment in HTML. There were other comments before. Use the angular bracket, the exclamation mark, and then dash dash. And to close the comment, dash dash, closing angular bracket. To insert a nav, we need the nav HTML tag. This is a tag that it's an HTML tag, and you can add then Bootstrap classes to this tag in order to use the navigation bar class, navbar expand, and fixed top. Fixed top allows you to, as say the word, fix the navigation bar on top of your screen, of your page. Then what we are going to use, it's an anchor where we are going to put our first button, which is the home button. In this case, I'm using the navbar brand, and this is a class that is usually used to highlight which is your, for example, company brand, or to put in to highlight, for example, the logo of your page and other this kind of let's say, important messages. In this case, we want that our first thing that we have, it's not a logo, but it's our own button. So with navbar brand, we are going to refer to the button, sorry, to the home button, and then we can have this other button here. This button you have to specify that is of type button if you are using Bootstrap. Here we are going to express some area controls. These area are really important for also the visibility of your website. We are not seeing areas in the details, but I would suggest you to go on the Bootstrap website and see and have a look to area, because they are an important characteristics of your website. So this button, what does, it has a specific target, which is the navbar supported content. As you can see now, here we are referring to this navbar supported content with an hashtag. But why we are using this? We are using this to refer to search for some ID. And who is going to have this ID? The next elements that we are going to use. This is a collapse. It has this div as a class, the collapse navbar collapse class. It means that the elements that we are going to put here can be manipulated and can collapse. So we are going to here put a menu, which is in normal screens. It's well displayed. So we will have all the button that we need in our website. I'm going to copy and paste them here. I'm giving you, okay, I hope that you can read all the navbar code. This is the complete navigation bar code. And as you can see, what we have added are an order list of nav item. With nav item, we are expressing the elements that are inside our navigation bar. And these items are of class, there are anchors, there are links inside this item, and we added a data value here. We will see later how we can use this data value. For now, they are not so functional, but later they will be useful. And they are just, of course, they don't have an effective link, because this is just a single page website, so we don't have external link to access. But maybe if we have a social button, we can add to this href, for example, an external link to Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Okay, so now if we save this and we try to execute our code, let's see what happened. Okay, fine. We have something. We don't have errors. This is great. We have a strange behavior, which is that when our screen it's getting smaller and smaller, we have some voices that disappear. They don't disappear because they are here. This is white on white, and this is why you don't read it. But as you can see, you have your navigation bar toggler here. So Bootstrap does this in automatic way, just expressing the tag that we are used. So expressing that, let's return on our code, saying that we want this collapse behavior means that when the dimension of the screen gets smaller, all this content collapse inside something. Inside what? Inside this button here. So here you are passing the target. The navbar supported content is this. The data toggle is collapse, and this is the behavior that you expected. So in this way, what you are doing is displaying the full length of your navigation bar when you have enough screen width. Otherwise, if you have, for example, on a mobile phone, you don't want to display all that voice, but you want just a button to click and the menu that appears as a drop down. So we have a navigation bar, but our navigation bar is pretty ugly and it's pretty colorless. I don't know if it's an English word, but now let's add some style to our web page. To add style to our web page, we need we don't use the Bootstrap CSS, of course. We have to write our specific rules. I'm going to add here inside the CSS folder another CSS file which is called main CSS. Of course, in order to use the main CSS file, you have to import it in your index.html. As said before, for import style, we have to import the style in the add tag of your HTML page, and you have to express that is a style sheet. This is the type of text that we are going to use inside the file, and this is the path to the file. Since I'm using a CSS folder, I have to put CSS/main CSS. So right now the main CSS is empty, so it does anything to our navigation bar, but now let's see how we can style it a little bit. So first of all, I want that my bar to display purple, so I will add a purple background to my navigation bar. Since I'm using a predefined color, let's say, I can write the name of the color, but the CSS has a supported number of colors. You don't have all the shades of that color. I'm using just a plain purple, and that is fine. Otherwise, you can modify the color from here, and here we will appear the RGBA or the hexadecimal codification of the color. So this is the first. Then what we want to do is to add also a style for our buttons, because otherwise we don't understand when we are on a button or when we are triggering a clickable behavior, let's say. So we are going to modify our cursor when we are on a specific navigation link element. So when we are, for example, on the home button, on the about us, about our mission, our projects, the cursor will change. Also the color will change, And this is something that applies to the navbar brand and navbar link class. Then we want to specify also that our nav link has to have a margin right of 1 EM, and this is a rule that we want to force, and so we are telling Bootstrap, telling the CSS that this rule is important. Using this this kind of notation allows you to override some default rules that are injected by Bootstrap or that are injected by default from your browser. So, for example, the navigation link has a predefined margin, and this margin is applied as default. Using this allows you to fix the margin right to 1 EM, and overall, if you don't use other important for margin right, this will be your margin right for all the rest of the project if you don't use other CSS code to edit it. Then what we want is to also add a behavior. We add here a behavior for our link that are going to change the cursor when we pass on them, but we want also to specify the behavior on over. On over, we are going to change the background of the button, let's call button, and the color of the text, that will be purple. Okay, and another thing that we want to put here is the toggler. And for the toggler, we are putting a simple background, a white background, and we are going to also use important here to override the default behavior and the default assignment of our browser or the default Bootstrap and CSS rules. So there is another thing that we have to add to our navigation bar in order to finish styling it, and this is the a behavior for the navbar collapse. The navbar collapse, the element of the navbar collapse are this one, and if you remember when I showed you the home page completed, these elements were not here, but they were at the end of the row of the navigation bar. How we can force this this display? We can use flex. Flex, it's a way to display element that is introduced in Bootstrap 4. Bootstrap 3 used the float to order and to display elements, and we use float. I think that I showed you the use of float in the last lecture. I don't remember well this, but flex allows you to do it in a more efficient way, simpler way, but of course you need to know how flex works. So explain you flex, I cannot explain you flex, otherwise we will need the other 2 hours of lessons, but I can leave you with a very good tutorial that I also had followed to start a little bit with flex when I started, and sorry, I have to find the link, and this is the tutorial I want to show you. Oh no, not this. Okay, this one. In fact, this was the slide I told you that we We will talk on this later, and this is the moment. The difference between Bootstrap 3 and Bootstrap 4, the fact that Bootstrap 3 uses the float while the Flexbox grid is used by Bootstrap 4, and at this link you will find this very simple and free tutorial. There are several lessons, it's not just one, but they show you, for example, I can go, okay, see, and this it shows you how to manipulate your content and how to use the flex, display flex, to display your elements. And there are lots of lessons, and all these interfaces is really interactable. You can write your code, so you can do experiment here, see what happened in the example here, and this example is triggered by you and also by who is presenting the tutorial. So it's a really good site to start with Flex. Before returning to our navigation bar, I want to also stress you this other feature of Bootstrap 4. Bootstrap 4 uses RAM or EM, while Bootstrap 3 uses Pixel. Now, I'm not going into the details of why this choice, but here I'm leaving you a good forum where they are talking about this different kind of reference dimension to use, and there is this user as a test with all these dimension in order to understand which is the best option to use. And the RAM seems to be the best option, so that's why Bootstrap 4 uses RAM and get rid of pixels. So now we have all the elements of our navigation bar completed. We added this justify content flex send to order the content of our navigation bar, collapse it at the end of the page. And now let's see how our home page has changed. Okay. Yeah, we have started to have something which is pretty clear, pretty elegant to see, but we need our header, of course. Before continuing, I want to be sure that the one who are following me has reached this point. Does any of you have this purple header? Maybe. If you need the code, I can return to the code page. Okay, don't worry. You need the CSS part or the HTML one? I guess CSS since it's the last. Okay. I wrote CSS, but seems not to work. Okay. What error it's giving to you? Okay, we can first of all, you have to ensure that you have this structure, this folder structure. So you need to have one CSS folder with the Bootstrap and the main CSS inside of it, and a JS folder with the jQuery at least, but you can import all of them with CDN, so there won't be problem for this. Instead, for what concern your style sheet, the name of the style sheet was main.css, and you are going to write this line of code here to put the main CSS inside your HTML page. Okay, you still having problem? Unfortunately, yes. Okay. Maybe you can, I don't know if you can share your screen and I'll figure this out, no problem. Okay, so if we have sometimes at the end of the lesson, maybe we can understand why it's not working. But I'm sorry that you have these problems, because it's useful to follow this part together with me. Okay. Okay, so let's continue. Just a question, because also Martina had the same problem of you, Elena. Martina, are you still having the same problem? That's strange. That's strange, because I'm using just a simple CSS, and this is the import for Bootstrap. I don't know. But at the end of the lesson, you will check with the code. I will give it to you. Maybe just importing a local file, as I'm doing, will solve all the problems. Just for curiosity, do you have problem with Bootstrap or with just the custom CSS? Okay, if it's the custom, you're writing something in the bad way. Okay, are you sure that you put the main CSS after your Bootstrap? And now we have to continue. Okay, so we will figure out at the end of the lesson. We have a few times to finish. So let's continue. And now what we want to add is an header. We have seen header also last time. Header tag are a tag which is introduced by with HTML5. So just typing header and assign the header a class header gives you the possibility to use the HTML tag, and then what we want to do is to add an overlay behavior to this header, and to do so we just type this class overlay, and then what we are going to do is to use the Bootstrap responsiveness to adapt the content inside the header. So our header will have a description and also an image. We will put the description inside this inside the HTML tag, while for the image we can use the CSS to import the image. So right now what we are doing is to set up all the HTML code that we need, and the code we need is the header element with a class header attached, the overlay class, and then a container to add the responsiveness to the description, the class description. The class description is a custom class that we created, and this class is for button, and it means that button has a particular outline style, and the color is a secondary color. Button LG means that we are forcing the dimension of the button to be large. This is all for what concerns our header. Let's see what is happening. Okay, we have something. We don't like it too much because we expected something different, but we don't have the style attached. So it's normal that we see this behavior in our file. Let's see how to add CSS and fix this. First thing to do is to go here in the main CSS and get the header class. For the header class, I'm going to use a background image, and these are all the possible configurations, possible parameters that we are going to pass to our background. So the size would be cover. It means that the image has to cover all the space that has, and the position is center. Now what I'm doing is to import an image using URL. For doing this, I have to have the image, of course, and I guess that you don't have all these images, so sorry guys, you will not see them, but pasting, this is not the right folder for images. Okay, right now I added this images folder, and as you can see here I have the image I need. So this is the image I'm going to import and that I'm going to use as a background image. Then what we want to add is an overlay. This is the style for the overlay, and we added the overlay here. The overlay is just a layer that gives opacity to our image, to our header. So we are going to fix its position. Position must be absolute. We are going to fix the mean height and mean width of the header, and it means that the header will occupy all the height and all the width that he has. And when you use position absolute, you have also to specify, usually you have to specify the position where you have to block, let's say, your header, in this case your overlay, and we are passing a top position of 0 and a left position of 0. It means that if we consider, okay, I don't know what I did, if we consider this as our screen, position top 0, left 0 refers to the corner on top left. And one last thing that we are adding to our overlay is this background, which is a little bit grayish. in reality, it's practically white. It's completely white, but it has an opacity, and it's like a grayish style. Then another things that we don't like in our code was the description. The description has a text that was not completely readable. So we are going to pass also here a position absolute. Here we want that this text is 30% of the height. It has a distance from the 30% from the top reference point. Then we have auto for what concerns margin, and a padding of 2 em. When you don't specify the direction of the padding, it means that the padding is applied top, bottom, right and left. Same thing for the margin. Then we add other things that we want to custom. I'm going to import all of them in just one copy and paste, but we are going to comment them line per line, so don't worry. These are the other. So when you have a class, we seen this before with CSS in the last lecture. When you have a class, you can also specify some elements that belong to this class. As you can see here in the class description, which is the class associated to this div, you have two elements, h1. Instead you have three elements. You have h1, you have p, and you have a button. So you can specify, selecting the description class, what is the style also of the element contained in the class. So you can style the h1 tag, you can style the paragraph, and you can style the button. Adding this style means that you are styling only the elements inside the description class. So if you are using the description class also in other HTML elements, for example in the cards later or in the carousel, this style would be applied also for that elements. But since we are using them just in the header, they will apply only in the header. So for the button, I want a border with a solid margin, which is 1 pixel. In this case, we can use pixel, and with a purple border and also a purple background, and the color of the text has to be white. For what concerns the description, we want that our paragraph has a text color gray, a specific font size, a specific width, which is expressed in percentage. Please don't associate a fixed dimension to width unless you have a specific reason to do so. And then we are also adding something to format the line of text. One last thing is to add a color for the heading, and this color is purple since we are doing all in purple. So let's see what we did right now. Okay, fine. So what we have, it's our header. We have some problem with the image, I guess. I don't know why it's not taking the image. We are going to fix this, but right now we have our test, which is well styled. The font is right, the color of the heading is right. Also the button has the expected behavior. What we don't like here is to have this header a little bit moved. And to do so, we have to adjust a little bit the behavior of this header, adding some JS behavior. To add a JS behavior, to add some JavaScript to our code, we have to use jQuery. So to do so, we are going to add in our JavaScript folder another script which name is main.js. So if when you add the JavaScript file, you should know you have to add JS extension, and then I will copy and paste this code. That is all the jQuery code that we need, all the JavaScript code that we need to run our website, our HTML page. And for this moment, we have just to focus on this line instead of these two lines. This is the first line. It means that this method, this function, is called at the beginning of when our page is loaded. So when our page is finished loaded, we are searching for, this is the jQuery syntax. You can use the $ to refer to an HTML element. In this case, you can refer to the document. In this case, you are referring to a specific class, which is the header class. You are accessing a property of this class, which is the height, and you are setting the height of this class as the height of the window, which means that the height of your header will be the height of your screen. So this means that when you load the page, the only things that you should see are the navigation bar and the header with your big image and some text here. So we have the main JS here, but we have also to have the possibility to use this JS code inside our project. So we have to import the main JS. Okay, import it, let's save it. Okay, so adding that fixed all the problems that we had before. You see right now also the behavior of our collapsed button. It's clear because of course it's white, so you didn't see it before, but now we have this button that appears when the dimension of the screen becomes smaller, and we have our page, our header is the complete dimension of our screen, and the image is covering all the space of the page that he has. The text has its padding, has its margin, and it's well formatted. So from now we have the start of our page completed. Let's see what other things we can add. Let me close some window. Okay, now should be better. So now what we had the buttons. Yes, we have it. Okay, we styled also the button. So now what we need is the about page. Our, let's call it our mission page, the page where we explain what is what our lab do. So to do this, I'm going to of course copy and paste this code here after the header. You see the code is simple. You have a div of class, a custom class about with a custom ID mission. This div has a container, so this div is responsive. It has text inside, and text is aligned centered. Then inside the container we put a row. Here in the row we have we specify the behavior that we want. So we want that for a large screen, we want that this div occupies just 4 columns. For medium screen, same thing, while for small screen, we want that this column has the full width of the page. And inside this div, we are going to put our images, the logo, our laboratory, expressing a class image fluid, which gives responsiveness to the image, and also text justify, which allows you to justify text. And what we are putting here, it's a caption for our image. Then we have the rest of our row, which has a text, and this text it's about the mission of our laboratory, and then here I put some placeholder just to write something. So here we are using an heading 3 and a simple paragraph. You see that there is also a relation when you organize your row in columns. In fact, you have to be consistent if you want to display things in a certain way. If you are expressing that your first part, your image plus the caption, is going to occupy 4 columns out of 12 of your row, you have to ensure that the next of your content can be displayed in the remaining 8 columns. Otherwise, this content will be displayed in the next line, and you don't want this behavior. Same thing for what concern the medium screen display, while for small screen, since you are occupying all the width of the row, the content will be adjusted in the next line. So this code was really simple. Now let's add the main CSS to the main CSS, the style. I'm going to use the about class to add all the elements that I need. So here in the main CSS, let's add our about. So what we are forcing is a position. No, not a position, because position is relative. When you use position relative, it means that position, you are using the position of your father container. So this position, the about section automatically adjusts its position based on the father element. Then you have a padding and a margin that you can set. We styles also the heading of the about section with a margin and color. The image as full height and full width. Remember that we used image fluid for our image, so the image is responsive. We had a style also for the span. This kind of display properties are also properties that belong to Flex. So I still suggest you to use Flexbox grid system when you use Bootstrap. You are forced in a way because now Bootstrap 4 use this system, but understanding it, it's very useful and allows you to write code in very fast way. Then we have also this about and desk class, which means that we are referring to this element here. Where is the desk class? Here. So we are referring to this, and of course we are referring to the simple class and then to the element inside this class, so the heading and the paragraph. we already write the same rules for the code before, so I can jump the description and let's see now what we have add. Okay, looks good. Seems that we don't have any problems, any error. We don't have anything. Okay, so we have our about us, our title, the text. This is the separator line, and this is our logo. Let's see the behavior when we stretch it a little bit. As you can see, this is a responsive image, so the image gets stretched, but then when you enter in a small screen visualization, you will have this way of display, which is not the best, but it works. Okay, so now we need our portfolio to add the projects of our laboratory, and before the projects, let's add the technologies. Okay, I will copy now a big piece of code, but trust me guys, it's really simple to read and to manage. This is our portfolio code. Okay, it fits perfectly the page. So we have to start with a div as always and put an heading. The heading, it's for the title, so technologies, and then we have a container. So you see there is always this pattern that is going to repeat. We put a container, this container has a flex behavior, it has a responsive behavior, and then all the children of this div can inherit the responsive behavior. So this class is a class that every child has of this row. And what we are putting is just a simple three-column section. As you can see here, we have LG4, LG4, LG4. It means that this is a 3 columns row. This is another 3 columns row for what concern medium screen, and this is just 1 column row for small screen. So when we have a larger screen, we can see 3 images, 3 of these images with caption, while if we have a small screen, we have just 1 image for column. And the same is repeated for the second line. We can put these 2 lines just in 1 row without specifying another row, because since we are using the grid system, Bootstrap automatically adjusts the second line in a new line. But it's important to understand that this line overall belongs to the same row. We don't have too much to insert here as a style. We have just to specify some position and to specify some color. So CSS file for the portfolio, it's really basic. This is the portfolio. We have a margin with position relative, and then color, margin, and other settings to fix the height, the width, and the margin. So let's save all. Remember guys, you have always to save before we start the project. And so now let's reload and we will see. We have our technologies part, which is well working. Okay, and it looks good. Let's see if it's responsive. Okay, image gets stretched and stretched. Now what I'm expecting is that, okay, all this image becomes one column. And it works. So, perfect. As you can see here, before it didn't work because I cannot click it, but here we have also our collapse behavior. So when the menu collapses in this button, you can click it and open the drop down menu. So we are close to the end. We just to add the post section and also the people section. Let's say maybe we can jump the contact. So let's do first the post section. Okay, post section is a little bit tough. I think that we cannot stay in one page. We have to scroll it a little bit. But the structure, I repeat, is always the same. You have a container, you fix an header for this container to have a title, and you put a row. Then you adjust content inside this row according to your layout. In my case, I want to display 3 projects at a time. So for a large or medium screen, I'm going to use 3 columns. And in each of these columns, I'm going to put a card. Cards are very useful in Bootstrap, are I think one of the basic elements, and in a card you can put a title, you can put a body, an image, a caption, everything you need to display a content, and it's a good tag, a good element to use if you want to show I don't know, projects of your projects that you are doing in case of your website, or for example the personas. You can use cards to display personas and to figure them. In my case, I'm using this card to put an image, that is the image of the project, a title, a text inside the body, and then also a footer that I can link to external source file. You see here I have an href, which I can add here because it doesn't have a link. And then we have the read more, and just copy and paste this for any other card that you want. So in my case, I just use this for 3 projects, which is TWB, which is Emoti, and which is the Magic Room. So now this is wrong. Let's save this. Let's add directly the style to this. Okay, here we are. Let's add the style here. Okay, so this is the style. Again, there are CSS for margin, for position, for color. We saw these commands. Then we have another command with these box shadows. It adds like a shadow effect to the card. We can adjust also the setting for the image. Here we are putting a media query to set a behavior that we want, where the max width is 768 pixels. That, if I'm not wrong, it's a medium display. So this is a rule that applies just when this condition is matched, and otherwise you have title and car body style. It's pretty simple what we are doing, but you can see how it's effective and how it's good looking, just typing a few lines of HTML and few lines of CSS. If you are looking at our code, we are maintaining the same structure of the last time when I did my homemade examples, let's say, just using HTML and CSS. But now with Bootstrap, we are boosting our style a lot, and this is a very good looking website, let's say. So what we need again, we need our personas part, our people part, our contact. Let's do this together. I can jump the part on contact maybe. And then another things that we want to do is to add a link between these voices, these links here, and this heading title here, in order to navigate our landing page in a better way. So we need to do these two things. Let's before add the theme section. Okay, maybe I will have a problem with my copy and paste because I forgot to close one div. Okay, now it's closed. And now what we are inserting is the contact form. And our theme section. So our theme section is basically made the same structure as before, containers, row. This time we want 4 columns, so we change the grid system to elements to have a dimension of 3. So we have 4 elements in our row. Image are fluid. We import our image from images folder, and here I added our name, the name of Professor GARZOTTO, my name. I don't know if you remember Fabio, who had the conversational lessons with you, and this is not Giulio, but it's Giulia, and I think that you had some lessons also with Giulia. So this is our theme. The images doesn't match our faces, and what it's missing is the last style part for the theme and for the contact form. So let's add this in our main CSS. Okay, let's save this and see. There is nothing new in what we use for the theme section, but we have this. We have this behavior that is triggered when you pass, when you hover an image, a theme item. When you pass with your mouse on a theme item, this behavior is triggered, and since explaining you in English will not be so clear, I will let you know. This is the behavior I'm telling, and we are doing this with the Bootstrap, with the CSS code that we added. The code that I'm giving you will have right now I have a little bug I'm seeing right now, which is this text here should be in the same position of research assistant of Giulia Cosentino, but this is because images have different dimensions. In the code I will upload, this bug is fixed, so you will read PhD student, and manager here. And this is our Get in Touch section, where we have our newsletter, ESA, newsletter subscription. And now let's see if this works. I think yes, because I already added the jQuery code, but we are going to see together this jQuery code, because it was the second part of the code that we added. It's the rest of the code that we added before. So let's return on the code here, and this is the behavior that use this animation to scroll down to the section that you need. As you can see, what you use is jQuery again. You use jQuery to select the navigation bar class to refer to the anchor tag of the navigation bar, and then you are listening to some event. This event is the click. So this means that when you click on the anchor tag of the navigation bar, this function is triggered. What does this function? This function takes the body and takes the HTML. It adds an animation to them, and this animation, it's a predefined animation called scroll top. And what you define is to scroll where you are passing, again, still using jQuery, the reference to the section you want to go. So in this case, suppose that we are clicking on technologies. I'm searching hashtag this plus, which means concatenate. So it's used for string concatenation. I'm searching for this data value technology, and I'm going to, and this is the duration for the animation. So it means that this animation takes 1 second to execute. In fact, we can see here, if we click, for example, let's click on home and click, for example, to our project, 1 second, and we are in our project. 1 second, and we are in mission. 1 second, and we are in technology. See how the duration of the animation changes based on how long is the how far is the tag that we are going to reach on the page. Contact, which is the last, has a really fast animation, while if we want to go, for example, to the mission is a little bit slow. So this is done automatically with the animation effects that you are setting. So let's see if we miss something. I want just to add another thing to complete this exercise, which is this. I want to import a specific set of fonts, because I don't like the predefined fonts that are using here. So I import my personal font from Google called Railway. Here I'm just putting some body style to eliminate padding and margin, and to adding a grayish background. And here I'm going to assign to each HTML element, to each heading of any dimension, and to each anchor, this font family that I imported. So now if we refresh, we should see also our text change it. Okay, and this is done. This is our single page. This is our single page website completed. We still have sometimes maybe we can. I want to finish the lesson talking about accessibility, which is not so relevant for the scope of your project, but I think that it's important if you want to develop web pages in your life, or you want you have to, I don't know, join projects, but you are dealing with this. So we jumped the description of the elements of Bootstrap, but we have seen them during the coding. These were just examples with card and with navbar, carousel, and drop down. You can find the same explanation on the Bootstrap documentation. Then here there is some links useful for themes and templates. These links are useful if you want to start from something which is pre-built and you don't want to do all the work that we did today. As you can see, you can also use Bootstrap together with other framework, like for example Angular, Vue.js. I think that there is also no React here. And another things that you can use are templates. No, maybe themes. This is for themes and templates. This is just for templates. Okay. I want to remember you that when you deal with themes and templates, please be careful and use only the code that you understand or that you have understood the behavior. Not put code without know what the code does, because otherwise, if you have problems or if you have errors, you never know where the error is, because you cannot understand what code are you using. This is something related to SaaS, but I want to jump it because I think that it's just a stress for you using it. Since for our configuration we use the normal CSS and we are not going to use Bootstrap through npm. In case we are using the npm installation, in this case SaaS would have been a good solution, but since it's something advanced, we can jump it for now. I will leave the reference and the slide if you want to focus more on this part. And this is how you can use themes in your application. These are links that we can see are useful to see again Bootstrap themes and Bootstrap templates. And in the guide it's completely explained every part of the import, every part of the usage. Of course, on GitHub it's full of example, on the internet is full of example. If you have a problem or if you have a bug, just type it on Google and you will find the problem. If you don't find the problem, two things: maybe your question is wrong, or maybe what you are doing is wrong. You are doing something which is impossible and you don't find the answer on the internet. Last topic, it's about accessibility. Accessibility is really important because we are internet users. Let's say we use our computer, we surf the net, we open pages, but let's say we don't have accessibility problems. I don't speak for all of you, but for example, I'm not blind, so I can see well all the pages. I don't have problems to distinguish colors, so I'm not daltonic. I don't have any kind of view problems instead of wearing glasses, of course. But if I were, for example, daltonic or blind, accessibility tools and accessibility is really important to let me view a page without knowing which is the elements of the page. I need something that read the page for me, for example, or it guides me in some part, and this is where ARIA label, for example, taking into account. ARIA label are used for this kind of problems, for accessibility problems. This is a sentence of Tim Berners-Lee. We talked about Tim Berners-Lee last time. Is the inventor of HTML, so in a way it's the inventor of the web. And the inventor of the web stated that accessibility should be a fundamental requirement for our HTML pages, because everyone should reach our HTML page or the HTML page produced by other. There are different kinds of disabilities. I'm particularly interested in this topic also because our laboratory deals with persons with disabilities. So we designed ad hoc interfaces for this kind of persons. And disabilities impairments can be can concerns every aspect of the human being, from visual impairments to hearing impairments, mobility, speech, cognitive, and also neural. This is just a stat that shows you how it's not a minority of persons, the one who have impairments of different types. So it's important to take into account this kind of persons when we are thinking to the users of our application of our website, or simple the visitors of our HTML page. And of course, the accessibility is an initiative of the W3C Consortium, which is the organization behind the web and behind the web. Tim Berners-Lee is the founder of this organization, and these are the 4 principles that we have to follow in order to have an accessible web page. So our page has to be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. It means that perceivable means that the user has to see all the information, and information has not to be hidden or I don't know, missing, for example. Operable, it means that you have to be a fluid navigation, and you have always to know in what page you are and where is the path that you use to reach that page. Understandable, it means that you have an interface that you understand. So if you have a button, you know that this is a button, and it's not a pop-up that opens another, I don't know, that opens a video or opens an image. Maybe you want a button to simple go to another page. So you have to make it clear the function of what you are using. And of course, the last is the robust, which means that your content must be unambiguous in a way. And these are the sub-elements that we can use that compose these 4 principles, the 4 principles. The elements for the perceivable, for the operable, for the understandable, and for the robust. This is an extra part, guys, but I like to explain this part because I think that is important when we when we design HTML page or when we design websites in general. So this is all for today. I hope that you that the lesson was not so boring. I know that writing code and C writing code, it's not so good, it's not so interesting, but I hope that right now you have all the basis to do your website and for your project. If you have question, please write the question on the chat. For now, I will stop the recording